Hi, everybody. This week, Matilda is up in Pretoria, busy with another cycle of spiritual direction training. So I'm on my own uh, doing the recording. And what I want to talk about this week is something that is still fresh in my mind. It's quite recent experience. And that is the issue of sleeplessness and concerns that tend to rise up at night, in the deep hours of night when you wake up prematurely, 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then you lie awake and you think about the day ahead and all the things that you have to cope with, that you have to sort out, that you have to handle. And one tends to be very pessimistic in those dark hours of the night, to such an extent that I've almost, and I say almost because I constantly slip back into old habits, but I've formulated for myself a rule to say, don't think that at night you'll find solutions. I tend to be too negative and pessimistic. Things looks too ominous at night. So I don't get too creative solutions necessarily in the dark hours or in the early hours of the morning. Because you wake up and it's all these thoughts going through your mind of what ifs. Say this is going to happen. How am I going to handle this? I'm not prepared. Or will the crane on the truck, will it be able to reach over far enough, and is it strong enough in that long reach to lift the heavy machine out of the doorway of the workshop? It's all right to load and move the kilns, the pottery kilns at Barrowfield with a tractor and the uh, hoist device that I've uh, assembled, and to move it around there and load it onto the trucks. But what am I going to do once I'm here at Tafelkop? How am I going to offload the kilns, and how am I going to move it with the tractor still at Barrowfield? So you have all these thoughts, and you tend to be very pessimistic about the outcome of all these problems. And what often happens in times like these is that one feels isolated. It feels as if you're alone against all these odds and challenges and demands, um, and you're not capable of handling everything. So, one of the remedies that really helps me, and that's where the contemplative spirituality comes in, um, because it draws us in and reminds us that we are part of a bigger picture. It's constantly, we've spoken about that before as well, constantly to be reminded that we're part of the bigger picture. I'm not on my own. David White says, everything is waiting for you. And that in itself brings comfort to me. And in that sense, when I tend to spiral down in this negativity and anxiousness and concerns as to how to cope with all these things, just to slowly read one of the comforting psalms around insomnia and sleeplessness and concerns. And in that sense, Psalm 116 is a big favorite of mine, and I'm reading it from the Message, from verse 1, only a few verses, the initial verses. Psalm 116. I love God because He listened to me. Listened as I begged for mercy. He listened so intently as I laid out my case before Him. Death stared me in the face. Hell was hard on my heels. Often, when you read the Psalms, you say, "Good heavens, that's very dramatic. Isn't he overreacting or embellishing his situation?" But once you're in such a place of worry and concern, it is almost like death stared me in the face. Hell was hard on my heels. Everything is doom and gloom. Up against it, I didn't know which way to turn. Then I called out to God for help. "Please, God," I cried out, "save my life." God is gracious. It is He who makes things right, our most compassionate God. God takes the side of the helpless. When I was at the end of my rope, He saved me. I love that verse. When I was at the end of my rope, He saved me. I said to myself, "Relax and rest. God has showered you with blessings. Soul, you've been rescued from death. Eye, you've been rescued from tears. And you, foot, were kept from stumbling." It's this psalm of concern and care and understanding. God knows that this won't be the last time that I'm in a flat spin. Coming to Him and then almost at death's door, because how am I going to cope with all these challenges? But very gently, there's such a sense of concern in this psalm. So just reading it slowly, it brings comfort. But what I also find, and that brought me comfort this time around as well, often when I read a passage from the Bible or a verse, it's in conversation with something else that I read. And it's a line from a poem by Mary Oliver, but I want to read the whole poem. And it ties into this whole concept of feeling part of the bigger story, a larger unity. And in this case, Mary is sleeping in the forest. And that is a big antidote as well. If we are so tied up in our daily concerns and worries, it is a very good practice to somehow create a time or a space where we can be in contact with nature. Every time when that happens, it helps me at least. And I think Mary as well, because she writes this poem, Sleeping in the Forest. "I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranging her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichens and seeds. I slept as never before, a stone on the river bed, nothing between me and the white fire of the stars but my thoughts, and they floated light as moths among the branches of the perfect trees." She touches on the issue of thoughts, but they are light as moths. There's perspective here. "All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in the darkness. All night I rose and fell as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better." Everything seemed to be so difficult and overwhelming at night. And then in the morning, I don't know whether it's the sunlight or the activity starting, but then things lift and we are more capable of finding solutions and be creative around problems. And it is truly like Mary says. She says, "All night I rose and fell, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning, I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better. And it ties in so beautifully with Psalm 116. Because then I arrive at Tafelkop. My tractor is still at Barrowfield, but then lo and behold, there's a tractor here that they're busy using just as we arrive. And we can use that tractor to move the kilns. And almost seamlessly, the crisis is averted, and the problem is solved. But in the dead of night, it was impossible to see a solution. So just this thought, I know in the future I'll grapple with these things again. But just sharing that with you, I hope it is helpful in some sense. Maybe you are struggling with insomnia at this stage, big concerns, worries. Hopefully this is helpful in some way. And next week, Matilda will be back and be part of the conversation again. In the meantime, keep well and keep warm. Bye-bye.